All right, so once again, thank you for joining us for the MicroAge Talks Technology webinar series. Today's webinar will focus on cybersecurity. My name is Maria Fiore. I am the Director of Business Development here at MicroAge, and I'm joined today by Amy Simpson, who's an executive here at MicroAge and is our subject matter expert today. Just before we begin, I just want to mention that you can ask your questions throughout the webinar by typing them into the questions panel of the webinar tool. We will also be recording this presentation, and the recording will be sent to you a little bit later today. So I'm just going to spend a couple minutes giving you a quick overview of MicroAge. MicroAge has 30 locations across Canada, and we are the largest network of IT experts in the country and have been delivering services and solutions to our clients since 1981. Our team is definitely passionate about technology, but what we truly care about is the success of our clients. And so how do we help our clients succeed? Well, we work with you to identify your challenges and opportunities so we can provide the best services and solutions that will meet your needs. And we do this with the support of our dedicated and experienced professionals. So our goal for today's webinar is to share with you what you need to consider when you think about securing your organization's IT environment. And you know, this is a topic that's top of mind for many of our clients and probably many of you. So that's why we have decided to present this. I guess with that, Amy, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Can you hear me all right?
I can.
Excellent. Okay, well, we're going to get started. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. As Maria mentioned, we are passionate about IT. We're also very passionate about securing all of your businesses and ours to make sure that we can continue to do what we enjoy doing in our businesses. And it's so fortunate that we found a great way to communicate and do things faster and better, and that happens to be on the internet. Unfortunately, this is the same place where cyber criminals have decided to also do their things. So there is a slight conflict there, but the industry continues to fight back with more and more savvy hardware and software that can help us all reduce the risk. So this is intended to be educational so that you, as the first slide says, what are you doing to minimize the risk? You might be a finance manager, an IT director, an owner, a manager, an administrator. There's a wide range of people who are tasked with this job of looking after their organization's security. So hopefully today we're going to cover a lot of different bases that each of you will take something from. So thank you very much, and I'm going to get started. So here's the agenda for today. Cybersecurity, what is it? I will tell you. We did some research and came up with some trends and common threats. A little bit historical there, but mostly looking forward to 2018 and what's in store for all of us. Why do these people do it? Well, I have some things to say there, but this is an open forum, so we'll just keep it good and straightforward for now.
Keep it clean, Amy. Keep it clean.
Business risks. I'm going to get into some of the risks and also a different kind of twist for 2018 again that we'll discuss. Our layered approach, which we've added some things to over time, but the basic concept of it has not changed because that is what is required to defend ourselves against these people. And then we'll have next steps and, of course, questions, as Maria said. You can put those onto the tool, and we'll address those at the end. So, cybersecurity. There's a lot of different interpretations of it, but basically it's practices and processes that are out there to protect us from attack, damage, unauthorized access. This includes both cybersecurity and physical security. So it's kind of a dual process, but I guess it's a word that is now going to become part of our everyday lives in business as we just try and move forward in spite of these people. So 2018 trends, as I mentioned, we went out to our industry partners People like CompTIA. There's all kinds of organizations that we're affiliated with that you may not be affiliated with that we receive information from on a constant basis. So as we went out there and did our research, there was 3 main recurring themes that seemed to pop up. So I'm just going to go over each one individually. So artificial intelligence and machine learning is kind of a scary proposition when you think of it, because the robots are going to start getting into cognitive problem solving and learning in order to help us do everything better. Unfortunately, this is the same kind of technology that the other guys are using to create their cyber crimes and breaches and hacks. So there will be a fight coming in 2018 between the good guys and the bad guys as to who's going to use this intelligence most effectively to either create or combat the issues at hand. Another big theme that came out was the European Union has come out with the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, which is coming out in May of this year. If you deal with European countries, you're obviously fully aware of it at this point. But if you don't, it's just a sign of things coming down the pipe that going forward, there is going to be an assumption or an attitude out there that you must get some kind of reasonable level of protection in your organization, or there's going to be ramifications. So there's a lot of work to be done still in Canada on this topic. I mean, currently Canada has their Cyber Incident Response Center, but my position on that is we're trying and we're doing a good job, but currently it really seems like it's intended for critical infrastructure only, i.e. provincial governments, federal governments, healthcare, things that are already deemed critical essential services, which some of us may not be involved with. So Canada's trying, but I think most countries are so worried about their own national security that small business has kind of run its course on its own because nobody seems to want to help. Then the last one I have on there is cyber insurance. That's becoming more popular, mainly because more and more people are getting hacked and realizing that, hey, maybe there's a good way to get some help here financially to help with system damage and outages and reputation harm, phone hacking. All these things can be covered by cyber insurance. But please note that just as you would go and get health insurance, there is going to be some forms and some questions asked, because no insurance company is just going to blindly say, okay, you're covered, and then find out you have no protection, because they really don't want to pay you. No offense intended to anyone in the insurance industry, but they're running a business just like us, and they have to do their due diligence before taking you on. So something to consider. And then on the flip side of that, you know, they're saying, oh, now the hackers and the cyber criminals will be targeting more people, you know, because the cyber insurance might be an easier payout versus a normal person. That remains to be seen. But anyway, those are some trends that I found interesting. I have a couple more to add because they're just late breaking. I was actually in the grocery store last week, and Time did a special edition on cybersecurity. It's not the regular magazine, so it costs $17. But of course I had to buy it, and it really is a good comprehensive overview on everything. If you really want to get into it, I can't tell you anything about it because they'll sue me for stealing their information. But if you want to go buy it, it's in the grocery stores now. I also noticed in the Globe today, there is a conference in Toronto. It's a Cyber Canada Senior Leadership Summit. It's a 2-day event, and they've got some pretty heavy hitters coming to speak at that, including an ex-Homeland Security person. So anyway, I think it's getting out there, and people are now starting to realize this is a serious problem, and what can we do to help, and especially what can we do to help us as small and mid-sized companies get on with our daily routines. So some recent vulnerabilities. The WannaCry, that was a huge one, and I guess we'll call that a ransom. It was email with attachments or bad links to websites. So it took a day and 230,000 computers in 150 countries were infected. So, I mean, that just shows you the extent and the speed at which these things can travel through. And we'll get into some more details on that when we talk about protection, but there's always going to be gaps in the protection no matter how much you have, because these things are created every second of every minute of every day. So there is going to be some sliding through the cracks before the fixes are in place. So it is a game of, who's on first, unfortunately. The next one I wanted to talk about was the Wi-Fi protocol. This is a protocol that we've all been using for over a decade. It's how we transmit information wirelessly through the air, but they found that there was a flaw in that people could be snooping. They would have to be near your Wi-Fi source, but still, it was kind of a slap in the face to know that we've all been using this tried and tested protocol that all of a sudden now has, well, cracks in it. That's what they nicknamed it, crack, that people can just randomly get through. The good news is in 2018, they're coming out with WPA3, which will have more enhanced security and encryption. And to close off on the existing protocol that everyone's still using, patches and updates and firmware changes fixed all that. So as long as you're updating all your stuff, it's all resolved and you don't need to worry. If you're not updating your stuff, that's a different story. The next one I wanted to talk about was the meltdown and the Spectra. So this one, it actually was January 4th when it was released. Sorry about that typo. And not much has happened since then, to be honest, other than all the manufacturers are going crazy trying to figure out and create BIOS and firmware updates for every single individual device using a different chipset. So you can only imagine what the industry's been going through over that one. The good thing about it, it's a vulnerability, and to date, nothing has been breached. So they're actually starting to get proactive at trying to go and find these holes and then fix them before things happen. So again, there's two components to that one. The one I just mentioned about the BIOS and the firmware, that's still in progress with our manufacturers. But on the OS side of things, there's a component there. But if you're doing normal patching, that should all just flow through and be taken care of. So when we talk today, there's really three main areas of focus. There's the whole prevention side, which we're going to get into all the things you could be doing to minimize your risk. Then the second part is monitoring and managing those things. So it's really key, because if you don't do that, then it's kind of, there's no point in doing the prevention if you're not going to stay on it and be on it and monitor it all the time. And then the third area, is the recovery and business continuity. We'll get into all three of those. And for 2018, there's some expansion to some of those areas when you talk about vulnerability scans, penetration testing, user training. Like there's been some great additions as we move forward in things that we can do. So if we get into some common threats, because I think it's important just to understand the threats. So when you're in your business, you can understand maybe what you can be doing differently to avoid them. So I guess hacking, the best way to describe it is just like a rogue intrusion, unwanted access. A good example of this is, for example, a website gets shut down because whoever was hosting the website was not using good best practices, and there were some open doors and people got in and shut down your website. That's just a common one. There's tons of them, but basically it's how they get in, and there's a million ways they do it. So it's our industry is constantly battling this, so we're all working hard, believe me, every day to try and avoid these things. So once they're in there, then they use malware. All its different flavors and forms are listed there to either infect, extract, wreak havoc, I don't know, take money, like anything can happen. The first few there have been around forever. Botnets, just to clarify, that's really just a short form for robot and network. This is how the criminals, synchronize their efforts so that they appear that it's a mass of attacks when it could just be a single person. So they almost become like zombies, and they use a different way of talking, an internet relay chat system. This is how they also would cause a denial of service attack. That's what DDoS is. So they would take all these robots or botnets and fire them off at your firewall, for example, and hammer it so that it would appear that you're getting too much activity and basically shut you down, because the system can only take so much. So there's a million things they can do once they're in there, unfortunately. So that's why we're here today, is to try and learn how to keep them out so they don't get to this point. Another big one lately is the farming, phishing, spoofing, which can include ransomware. This is basically based on trickery, can be sent through email. They take advantage of humans. I mean, and unfortunately, we are the humans. We are the ones running these computers. So of course they want to take advantage of us. That's what they do. The spoofing thing, unfortunately, is very easy to do. Replicating people's email addresses so they look totally legitimate, sending them to someone, attaching things to them, or making them do things they're not supposed to do. A recent example was a university in Edmonton that I guess willingly gave away $11 million to the wrong person, and it was a criminal. And this happened because this was sort of a targeted phishing attack, but they targeted the construction firms that were dealing with this university and basically mimicked their emails and told them that they were changing their banking information, and they did it. And this did not go over well. You know, the chair of the board was pretty mad and said, you know, we've got to look at our financial controls. Yes, that's true, but you also need to train your employees so that they validate these changes in a proper manner, and look at the source of where they're coming from. These big examples hit the press, but I can tell you from personal experience in our industry that this is happening all the time, every day. Maybe not $11 million, but it's happening all the time. And it's a definite real threat out there. So I guess why? Why? Because I think that these are highly intellectual, technical people. I think they're bored, and I think they're criminals, and they feel that they're making some kind of point. Not sure what it is, because to me, when you boil it all down, you're not really showing your intellect when you're a criminal. You're a criminal. And basically, they're after anything they can get. The list is there, and they're going to do whatever they choose with those items. So it's pretty scary, because we're the ones in charge of all this data for our customers, for our clients, for our employees, depending on what industry you're in. And it's up to us to secure it, to make our best efforts to secure this data. So the business risks, other than shutting down your systems and making them inoperable, which seems obvious, but I guess it isn't in some cases. If you haven't been through a situation, you may not know that, but that is what happens. Also, the data corruption, they can basically render it useless. We did have an incident recently where someone was putting everything into the cloud, and through syncing, you know, everything wants to sync with everything very quickly and do all these great things, and it's lovely, but unfortunately they synced up their corruption into everything, into their backup, into their tablet and their notebook and their iPad or whatever, or their phone. Everything was corrupt in a heartbeat, just because of the timing of when it happened and the timing of this synchronization, and they were left with nothing. So bad things can happen, and we're going to talk about how to avoid some of those things going forward. The image of your business, this was another theme for the 2018 research that we did, that in the future, you know, there will come a time when companies will only deal with companies that they trust and know to be secure. That is the future. because who would want to deal with someone who's insecure and risk their potential loss of a partner or a supplier or their own data? It's very wide-reaching. And then the cost to the business, if this happens, obviously reputation, productivity loss, you can't place orders, you can't conduct business, you can't get emails. I think, the business risk is there and unfortunate, but we have to know about it. So layering, as I said, we love layering because it does work. It will minimize the risk of you having a catastrophic breach or attack. So these are the layers that we're going to get into in detail, starting at the top with the firewall, moving down to antivirus and anti-spam, our old good friends that we continue to love and use. Patch management, we've added best practices just to make you aware of some tips and tricks on the IT side of the house that you must adhere to if you want to be more secure. The human firewall, we'll get into that. That's your employees or you or your staff being aware of everything. And of course, good old backup, another favorite, and a data recovery plan. All these components added together will give you a good fighting chance moving forward. So, a firewall. These are very sophisticated business class devices that I would recommend that you deal with a reputable certified company that will look after it properly for you. It is your first line defense to the outside world. So your company's working in a building which has the internet, but this firewall device acts like a bubble around that building and protects not only the flow of traffic in and out of your building, but what is that traffic? Is it bad traffic? Can it be identified as a threat? And it will be stopped right then and there. So boom, if you have one of these, it's configured properly, you manage it and monitor it properly, you've probably wiped out a whole bunch of problems right out of the hopper. But I just want people to understand this is not these little devices that you get at a retail location that cost $79. That is not what this is, not even close. This is a business class device with unified threat management and a whole bunch of other things that will protect you. Antivirus and anti-spam. They are always great and continue to help us out in this battle as long as they are updated. So you cannot just install it and buy it and forget it. It doesn't work that way. You have to be checking, looking, or having someone doing that for you to get that out of your way so you can conduct your business. But if an antivirus program isn't updated, it's not useful. So don't even bother. You might as well not have it, because if you haven't updated in 3 months, I don't know how many viruses would have come out, but we see stats all the time of what our stuff's capturing, and believe me, it's thousands of things going on all the time that these tools just say no, and they get kicked out. Anti-spam, similar. That's very specific to mail, different kind of technology, but your mail ends up going through a secondary funnel, we'll call it, and again, trapping things that look suspicious or aren't right. These tools take tweaking and modification to make sure that you're not missing out on some good things, but keeping out the bad things. So again, a little bit of sophistication there, but when managed and handled properly, works fantastically. Next thing we're going to talk about is patch management and best practices. So patch management, that's residing everywhere on every device, software programs. So this is its way of receiving updates and changes based on summer productivity changes, but then there's also security patches that come out. Both are important, but obviously today we're talking about security. So what happens is these manufacturers find out about something that's a breach or a potential problem. They send out patches, they get applied, problem gone. All great if you're doing the patching and the updating. If you're not, that's not a good situation. because you're leaving yourself open to possible breaches. We added in some best practices, very important stuff that we're always telling our clients about and mandating them where possible to adhere to these things because they are a key element, and they did also come up over and over in our research for 2018 trends. So again, the passwords, there is a situation I'm going to tell you about a client on Office 365 where they had someone that was a student helping out, and they had them set up their whole Office 365 environment. Now, unfortunately, the passwords used as the master admin were not sufficient, and they weren't secure enough, and they were breached. And as a result, their breach transpired into 3 or 4 people in this company having a conversation, but it wasn't really them. I'm trying to explain this as easily as I can. Anyway, the end result was one of the employees in that company almost transferred a large sum of money in error to one of these criminals. So that's an example of, oh, you know, it's Office 365, we can just do this ourselves and everything will be great. That may be true if you have the expertise, but if you don't and it's set up incorrectly, bam, this is what can happen. So setting up things properly with proper authentication, password links, complexity, this is all really important things that can prevent you from being breached. Two-factor authentication. You know, we hear from customers from time to time that we're not going to do that. It's too much work. We don't want to do that access that way. Too many passwords, too many things. You know, they don't like change, but we're not just doing this because we're trying to bother you. We're doing this because this is the right thing to do if you want to be secure. So I'm hoping in time people will start to understand this more and embrace these best practices, because it can end up saving you a lot of time and trouble. So some more best practices. We do recommend that you do some external work. So everything else I talked about prior was kind of internally, but externally you can look back into your company when you do vulnerability scans, penetration testing, which is like a fake attack sort of simulated, to see how you stand. These are important things to start doing. There's also now dark web monitoring if you want to take it to that level. So, I mean, it is endless, the things you can do, but we're trying to keep it to things that we think the average, normal, medium-sized business should be doing to protect themselves. The human firewall. We do a whole nother session on this specific topic, but today we'll just do a quick overview. And you can see the data there. 30% of breaches are the result of human error, as I mentioned before. We are running the computers, so high probability that we will be at fault when something happens. But educating your staff on what to recognize or what to double check on or verify would be a great idea. There are programs out there now. They're called ASAP, which are automated security awareness programs that your managed service provider can help you with. These can send out planned, reoccurring attacks on your company that aren't attacks, that will instantly educate your people and send them a link saying, hey, you just clicked on this, you did a bad thing, and do you know why? Here's some training, don't do it again. So this is what we're looking at in 2018 is it should be part of your new hire process, and repeat it as often as you can and continuously, because some people get it and then after 6 months they're like, yeah, we're good now. But these tools are made to bring out new threats and new things that keep coming out so that you're always current and up to date on the latest look and feel of the latest cyber breach or attack. So the next layering approach is the good old backup I discussed before. Excuse me. So I guess we still come across people that just have a file backup and then they have a catastrophic issue and don't understand why it might take us more than 7 minutes to bring them back up. Well, that's not a system backup or a system state backup. It's data in files. And if you go that route, that's fine, but you need to understand that it might take some time to get you back up and running, as we have to rebuild your whole infrastructure in the cloud or on the ground or wherever it is, and then repopulate the data back to that place and start over. When you have a breach, I mean, the backup is the key to your survival. And if your backup is overwriting itself every 24 hours, that's probably not a good idea unless you're retaining some other backup from a period of a week ago or whatever program you're on, because sometimes those viruses will infiltrate and then they get backed up into the backup, if that makes any sense, and then your backup's no good too. So basically you're done. So a combination of something, cloud, on-site, both would be great, and just make sure you understand what it is you're backing up and that you're monitoring it and managing it and testing it. So we've also had clients saying, well, we've got a backup, we're good. Well, they haven't looked at it in 6 months and they didn't have a backup for 3 months and then they got a breach. That's pretty scary because then you have nothing and you're at the mercy of these criminals, or you're looking at a whole rebuild. So again, don't forget, the long forgotten backup is still needed and required. So I guess part of a good recovery plan is the backup, but the recovery plans are a little more involved, and it's going to require you to talk to your company and your management and decide on what you think is a good recovery time for your company. Talk to the different departments in your business. You might be a manufacturing plant, so you need to talk about how is IT integrated into your manufacturing and what is going to happen if something happens to that. Will you be able to make the stuff that you make and ship it out the door? Talk to the people in your company, have a meeting, and make short, medium, and long-term plans based on these priorities. And, you have to cover off other things that may not involve IT if it is a site disaster or an environmental disaster. So you make the plan, make it available, and test it once in a while, because you don't really want to wait for a crisis and then say, oh yeah, what was that plan? And what do we do? It should all be just laid out so it's straightforward, because the future tells us that you might need it. So we should be ready. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about the cloud, to bring some clarity to the fact that the cloud itself does not inherently provide security. The cloud, in fact, is where all this bad stuff happens. That's the internet. It's a fancy word for the internet. So all the layers we just discussed are still required. Communication is a two-way street. So if your cloud provider is secure and you're not, my example back to the Office 365, it doesn't matter. Like, things can still happen. So you need to be careful, and that infection, your cloud storage and applications, as they sync and replicate, you got to have another layer of storage, some combination, maybe a hybrid of on-prem and the cloud to have some redundancy. If you are 100% in the cloud, we do recommend dual internet providers, just to make sure that your whole business doesn't come to a halt just because your one IT provider is gone down for some reason. You have another one that you can quickly switch over to. Check with your cloud providers to ensure they have the right security in place, just to make sure. And again, just that single point of failure is kind of important. That came up too in my 2018 research, because the more we centralize, the more we're susceptible to problems. So it's good to centralize, but I think we also need to have components that aren't, just for that extra layer of protection. So there is no single point of failure. That's the goal, so that you can just keep running your business in spite of all these things. That's what we're striving to do here when we help clients. So, MicroAge can help. Look at that. Obviously, we'd love to help you with any of these areas, but today was to educate you, to help you make decisions based in an area that might not be your area of expertise. That's our goal. So when you feel comfortable with it, then you can easily say, okay, you know what? We need to do something. So we want to help you do all these things, a security evaluation, the end user training, think before you click. We can be IT resources for your projects. So once you decide on what you want to do, or we decide with you, we can implement all these things. Obviously, security solutions, antivirus, patch, the whole gambit. This is our business. It's all we do. So, and I assume it's not all what you do, because you're running your own business. And the managed services is huge. As I was saying, the maintenance and support of all these things is critical. You can't just set it and let it go. It doesn't work that way anymore. You need to be on this stuff, looking at it, managing it on all the time. That's the new world. So anyway, we'd love to help you out. And as I said, this is our area of expertise. So the next steps, you're going to get off this phone and you're going to do these 4 things. Take a look at your current cyber security situation to determine the gaps. If you don't know where you're at, then you need to get help. We'd love to help you with that. If you do, write it all down and figure out, okay, we're doing these 3 things, but not these 2. What's our plan? Because really, if you're going to not do the things that are recommended, you're kind of saying that you don't care. And we know that's not true, because we all care about our businesses. But I know it comes down to budget and planning and resources. I know what it's like, because I deal with things in my business that aren't my area of expertise. So I know how overwhelming it can be, and we understand. We're just like you. We just happen to be in the IT business. So then the next step is we have to decide on how to address the gaps. What can we afford? How can we plan for this? You know, can we do it in 3 months, 6 months, next year's budget? Can we finance it? Can we, there's a million things you can do to help it work within your company's needs and budget. And educate your people. We put that up there because it is huge. Assuming you do those things to minimize the incoming crazy land stuff that's coming through, then it's your people. So you must educate them. Otherwise, when it happens, you can't really go back to them and say, really? What happened here? We had the training. If you don't train them, it's a free-for-all, and it's not their fault. So you can't really blame them, but they could be your weakest link if you don't. And of course, work with your service provider. Find a good, reputable, trustworthy managed service provider and work with them in partnership. We're all in this for the long term, and your success will be our success. So we want to work with you to make sure that you're going to be okay going forward, because you're our livelihood, and it works both ways. So we want to help you be protected so that we can continue our relationship into the future and put these cyber criminals in their place where they belong, which is not in our businesses. So that concludes my talk for today, and I'm going to turn it over to Maria to talk to you about this wonderful ebook that she has developed.
Thanks, Amy. Excellent presentation. And for those who are listening to Amy, some of you might be owners of businesses. Amy owns the business in Peterborough, and she talks like a business owner because she is one, and she understands a lot of your pain and what you need to go through and all the bombardment you have on a daily basis. But but this is something that I know she's passionate about because you can hear it in her voice, but she speaks from that ownership place. So thanks, Amy.
Welcome.
Yeah. So the ebook, yeah. So you talked a little bit, Amy, about the different threats that are out there and all of that. There's so many. There's so many different things that are out there, and we just the ebook is just a little bit of a definition of what they are, what they do, how they can threaten your businesses, and what you can do to protect yourself. So that's what it is, and as I mentioned before, this is being recorded, so we'll be sending out just a few hours from now the link to the recording and the link to this ebook, so that you can go and download it and have a read about all the fun stuff that goes on in cyberspace. But just before we get into the questions part of it, I mentioned before that we have a lot of dedicated people at MicroAge, and one of those people is Herb Roblin, who is the National Services Operations Director here at MicroAge. He was having some technical issues earlier, but he is with us right now, and I think, Herb, you wanted to mention something.
Yes, Maria, thank you very much, and thank you, Amy. So the question always comes up, so why do we go to all of this effort to do these webinars and these tech talks? And I would tell you that for us at MicroAge, nothing makes us more upset than to get a call from a business telling us they're down because they just got hit with a ransomware or some form of cybersecurity attack. I'll tell you what really cheeses us off is if we get that call and it's from a business that we've made a presentation to, and for some reason or another, they have decided they don't have the budget or it's not going to hit me. They're living, it's like that Swiffer commercial where the lady says, I've been living in a false illusion of grandeur or something like that. No, it's not a matter of if you're going to get hit, it's a matter of when you're going to get hit. So we're dealing with the fallout from these threats on a daily basis. Realize there are many companies that feel that since they bought an antivirus solution that they're good to go. Our mission with this MicroAge Talks Technology session is to make you more aware of the threats, the risks, the consequences associated with cybersecurity. And our approach, as Amy has mentioned at MicroAge, is to implement a layered strategy. Like, it isn't going to be a one-part solution. It's going to be multi-part, layered on top of one another. There is no one magic bullet that you can get. So you were all invited to this Tech Talk, this webinar, by your local MicroAge. By all means, if you have any questions, ring them up and have a chat with them. That's what they're there for. We would rather have the chat with you, explain what we do, what we can do, and we'll take it from there. And I would also like to thank Amy for the content and the presentation today. Amy, you were just spectacular. Thank you very much. So now, if there's any questions, please feel free to jot them in the question box. If not, back to you, Maria.
There are a couple of questions that came in. Again, yeah, if you're listening and you have a question, just type it into the questions box while we go through some of the ones that have come in. So the first one is from Michael, and it says, how often should we assess our security situation?
If you mean overall, I would think once a year, that's an assessment would be good. But as I said, the ongoing maintenance and monitoring of it is ongoing daily, by the minute, by the hour. Does that help?
Yeah, I think the question was related to, you put all these things in place, but how often should you relook at things to make sure that you have the right solutions in place, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, it could be more than yearly, depending if you change things in your business and all of a sudden you're doing something different than you did before. your needs might change. But if you always go back to that layered approach, in concept, it should remain secure and standard. But as I mentioned, new things get added to those layers over time as the threats change. So it's kind of a gray area, to be honest, but I would say at a minimum, look at it yearly and then do the monitoring and the maintenance, and you should be fine.
Yeah, that seems to be a best practice. Is just looking at least yearly, and it depends on your business too. Like you said, if there's any changes, then maybe you need to relook at it more often.
Mm-hmm.
Question from Kathy: what would you suggest as a good strategy to train and educate our staff on cybersecurity?
Mm-hmm. Well, a good strategy is embracing one of these tools that is currently out there. They can be acquired through your managed services partner, but it is the best way. So it's an automated tool that would be set up. And as I mentioned, it's just part of your company's normal life. And they get sent things that are fake breaches or fake intrusions in their email. And then they're trained on the spot. Alternatively, there are people out there that do education for employees. I know I've done some of that in our area. I know other MicroAges are doing it. So sometimes that's a good start, is to do something in person just to make people aware. And then the follow-up can be one of these great tools that just continues on.
Yeah, perfect. We've got another question from Jim. How can we know if the tools we're using right now are good from a security standpoint?
I'm not sure, but if you're asking that question, I would have some kind of assessment done to check them. Because if you don't know the answer to that question, then there's a possible issue. I'm not saying you need to be the one to do that, but again, back to the monitoring and maintenance, you should know if your stuff's working. And if you don't know if it's working, that's like a gap in your planning. So you need to just get some help to determine if it's working, and or some kind of reporting out of the tools that you currently have. Like I know, for example, the firewalls we use, there's a whole nother world. You can go into this place and you can see every single thing that hit that sucker in the last, it's crazy land. Stuff I don't even want to look at. I just want to look at the bottom where it says you're good. And here's all the stuff we captured. But so, and it would go back to your personal savviness in these areas. So you do it, you go look in those places, or you get someone else to go look in those places, or send you a report that says, I looked in those places and you're good. Sorry, that was a run-on sentence.
Yeah. So in following on to what Amy was saying, we are equipped to do security assessments of your environment. So if you're not currently a MicroAge customer, or if you want to have a security assessment, we will do that. We also engage, depending on the level of complexity of your network. We have been approached by some customers who want us to do intrusion testing by using the term in the industry is white hat hackers, as opposed to black hat. The black hat are the bad guys. You'll remember the Westerns from, well, maybe you don't because you're not 70. But the whole idea is to do a trial hack of a system by a white hat hacker. So if he can get in, then you know for sure the black hat hackers can get in. So we can do that for you as well.
Okay, great. I don't see any other questions coming in. So again, Amy, thank you very much, and Herb, thanks for making it. And I wanted to thank all of you for joining us today, and again, encourage you to take advantage of the free ebook that we're providing to you. So with that,
one other thing, Maria, one other thing. when you get the link to the recording, if there's someone in your business that you feel would benefit from this, feel free to share that link with them. The more the merrier. This is, like we said, an educational piece. And I know the last time we did this, I sent it to my daughter, who's a lawyer in California, and she ran it by a number of the people in her firm, and they were amazed that all of this information was out there. So we couldn't help them in California, but we can certainly help you here in Canada. Thank you.
Awesome. So with that, I guess we'll wish everyone a really great day. And thanks for being with us.